Return of the Living Dead Part 2 is a 1988 horror comedy movie directed by Ken Wiederhorn and starring Michael Kenworthy, Paul Van Linden, Suzanne Snyder, Tom Essex, and the return of Tom Matthews and James Karen. Return of the Living Dead Part 2, perhaps one of the most anticipated sequels to a beloved horror classic ever. I would have loved to have been there when this was first announced, when the first lot of advertisements started to roll out. Return of the Living Dead is one of my all-time favourites, so knowing the sequel was just around the corner, I would have been in hype mode. Now let's see if Part 2 does justice for the Return of the Living Dead franchise. Again, I'll try to keep light on spoilers and try to stay away from going too in depth with key scenes and focus mainly on my opinion and some interesting information about the film. The film opens up with a convoy of US military trucks and soldiers driving for a dark and wet night, carrying a very important and familiar looking cargo. Filled with canisters of trioxin and mixed with human stupidity and wet weather conditions, the army ends up losing a few of these deadly canisters. We then meet our main hero of the show, young Jesse. From no parents in sight and being left with a local babysitter, who is the babysitter from hell, we follow him dealing with local bullies, the babysitter, and eventually the undead, with some very unique characters tagging along throughout the film. The training to be heartthrob electrician, a very familiar looking pair of professional grave robbers, a worried girlfriend, and a laid back extravagant doctor, and also that babysitter is coming along for the ride as well. We follow our band of wacky characters trying to survive the zombie outbreak, make contact with the US military, going from locations like a hospital to a meatpacking factory, traversing through a ghost town whilst trying to avoid the ever-growing undead army. The director is Ken Wiederhorn, and he is no stranger when it comes to the zombie genre, as in 1977 he directed the cult Nazi classic Shockwaves, starring Peter Cushing. The film has a strong following and is well known to zombie fans. In just over 10 years, he returns to the familiar genre once more. He had made it very public at the time that he wanted to move away from doing horror movies, and that shows with previous works like King Frat and Meatballs Part 2, and also this movie. Return Part 2 has a very strong comedic tone to it. Now the first film does have some very funny black comedy moments in it, but it was a horror movie first. Still had great scares and some generally horrifying moments. Comedy was always used naturally and never forced. Very subtle at times. But with Part 2, the comedy takes centre stage, and this is what Wiederhorn wanted. The film would have been granted a PG-13 if it wasn't for a scene later on of a zombie getting blasted by a shotgun in 2 parts, but even then it's done for laughs. 90% of the gags are done for laughs. There are some great effects, and a lot of practicals and animatronics, which all look fantastic. But compared to the first one, there is little to no blood. It's either green or brown sludge almost. Very bloodless kills, but like I said, that's not a negative, but it shows how the first and second one are very different in execution. The movie feels like it was made for a younger audience, and I wish it was, rather than being this strange hybrid of horror and comedy. Films like The Monster Squad is a perfect example of a darker in tone, but fun enough to be targeted at a younger audience. But with this, they have scenes of very over-the-top slapstick, and having the child as the main star of the film is very relatable for children. But then there are a few quite nasty feeling scenes of zombies eating brains, and some genuinely effective scares, but not enough to warrant calling it a horror movie out and out. Either make it one or the other. Instead it feels very lost in what it wants to be. The movie has many references and callbacks to Part 1, which I'm always a big fan of. Definitely makes it feel like an official sequel. From the similar storyline with how the trioxin gets released, to some fun one-liner throwbacks like, "Boy do you like this job?" And the most obvious connection is return of not just 2, but 3 actors reprising similar to their exact same roles from the first one. Starting with Colonel Glover, played by Jonathan Terry, who plays the high-ranking army official who the characters make contact with from the first movie. But the stars of Part 2 is the return of James Karen and Tom Matthews, who return to play very similar characters with the same dynamic of teacher and student type, filled with the same lovable banter they give and just overall feeling and relationship of Freddie and Frank. This time they play Ed and Joey, who are tasked to go from graveyard to graveyard making sure the bodies and coffins have not been tampered with or vandalised, with Joey being his first day on the job, the same with Freddie from Part 1. Both Karen and Matthews do a wonderful job here. They have arguably more to play with in this film, and both of them, especially Karen, has a lot of fun with this, by dialing in his performance by 11, being very over the top and delivering his lines like performing in a pantomime. But for this type of film, it works. Everyone is acting very over the top. They have some great lines and moments, especially when acting with the newly resurrected corpses. It's lovely to see them here, and like I said before, they are the highlight of the movie. Also, as soon as you see the character of the doc, your first thought would be, Why did Don Calfer not play him? It would be perfect for him, and he did audition for the role but didn't get a part, which is ridiculous when you think about it. He would have had so much fun with that character, a real shame. I mentioned earlier the effects and how they differ from the first one, but still maintain that very creative execution. A whole host of people worked on it, with some returning from the original film and others being brought in especially for this. A lot of animatronics is going on here, with some truly remarkable stuff being shown, from rising corpses interacting with human characters and it coming across very naturally, to talking severed heads and freshly burnt zombies trying to keep moving. It's all great stuff. Zombies' faces getting punched in and exploding with bright green slime, and hands getting severed. Zombies losing jewels and more. The people who created all this should really be happy with what they achieved. Next to the return of Matthews and Karen, the effects really do hold all of this together. You never go too far without seeing something cool, and with the movie clocking in at around 1 hour and 25 minutes, it's paced really well and zips by. The two standout scenes for me is the zombies bursting out the ground, when they all get brought back to life after being exposed to the trioxin gas. And now it is very goofy, with zombies stepping on each other's heads and fixing their glasses. It's still fun and reminds me of the Michael Jackson Thriller music video with the constant smoke and the montage of feel to it. It makes no surprise but there is a Michael Jackson zombie cameo at the end, which when I saw it I did roll my eyes, and it was such a late addition to production and stands out like a sore thumb. The next scene I really enjoy is the one where we first see Tarman. I've not mentioned yet that the Tarman does return for part 2, and by looks of it, a lot of people and fans are not keen on the updated design, with the animatronic eyes, but I love it. I think it's really cool and works perfectly for the scene he stars in, emerging from the shadows and the camera panning up revealing a truly terrifying face. I wish there was more of him in this one. Great design and effect. I do prefer the original Tarman, but this one is just as good in my opinion. Loved the voice. It was quite eerie having it so deep. It was really effective with the new look and how the eyes were more expressive in this one too. My overall opinion on this film is that it's a fun slice of American 80s cheese. From the home workout videos to at times a Steven Spielberg look with the child characters aspect, and also where the film takes place, the cul-de-sac in the suburb, had that Poltergeist and E.T. look. Well, it was trying to achieve that, but it did fall a bit flat. I don't like being negative. And I pointed out a lot of positives, like the effects, continuity part 1 and overall presentation, but the negatives outweigh the positives, and it's just incredibly underwhelming. One of my favourite aspects, but really wasn't utilised like how I wanted it to be, was the military. Again, they were played out as a joke, but I really liked the scenes of them trying to track down the missing barrels, patrolling the streets, and also at the end, but again not enough of it to scratch my itch. The music, both incidental and licensed tracks, are not in the same league. I did watch the UK DVD release, and I know the tracks have been changed due to licensing issues. So only the theatrical version has the original soundtrack. So perhaps if I watch that copy, then I'll appreciate the music a lot more. I know Shout Factory released the film with the original music intact on Blu-ray a few years back, but I've yet to get my hands on it. I dislike the dumb comedy. The feeling of the film is not the same as the original. The horror had been drained and replaced with over-the-top, goofy comedic scenes and characters. The gang in the first one, well, all the characters are also great. They all have unique personalities and characteristics, and all the actors do a great job at getting that across. But with this, there is no substance. Badly written characters, and all of the actors play their roles like a cheap pantomime. The character Doc Mandow is a perfect example. Played totally for laughs, doesn't take one scene seriously. Not the performer's fault, but it's how he's written. It can really be jarring and take you right out of the film, especially if you're so familiar with part 1, and part 2 is a new watch like it was for me. I've no nostalgia towards it like I do with part 1, and had low expectations with what I had heard from others, but it really doesn't hold up in any way, and from this alone, it's pretty obvious why the franchise turned out like it did. This film took a nosedive and almost ruined any chances of having a structured and coherent set of sequels. Again, go in with an open mind, be amazed by the practical effects and keep a keen eye out for all of the callbacks and references, but with that in mind, you'll be wishing, why am I not watching the first film? And how much of a missed opportunity this film is. Only my personal opinion, and I've only watched the film once now, so next time I'm hoping I can enjoy it for what it is. Return of the Living Dead Part 2 has brains, but definitely not more brains. Let's take a look at some home media releases of Return of the Living Dead Part 2 from both the UK and US. First up, it was released in the UK by Polygram Video, small box VHS in 1988, uncut. In the same year, it was released again in the UK by Parkfield Entertainment, again in small box VHS, uncut too. These releases were all put out under the Guild Home Video, and all have variant covers. They seem to be quite common even to this day. Then we jump to 2004, where it was released on DVD both in the UK and the States by Warner Brothers. A commentary was included on this release by the director and one of the stars. This would be the last time for a long time before we see another official release of the film. Jump to 2018, when Shout Factory released it under their Scream Factory Collector's Edition line, packed with a plethora of brand new special features like interviews and documentaries. Also given a newly illustrated cover to fit in with their release of Part 1, which both are absolutely drop dead gorgeous. But most importantly, being the first time the original soundtrack with all the licensed tracks, so you can now experience the theatrical cut once more after all of these years. This release is still in print and an absolute must have for fans and collectors, even if it's for the new extras and theatrical cut alone. Get it. There's the 2004 DVD release by Warner Brothers of Return of the Living Dead Part 2. Great cover art using the original theatrical poster. You know, I love the colours, the face in the clouds, the city at the bottom. It's very similar to the Fright Night cover art. And it's been brought up quite a few times, the similarities within both posters. But, you know, it's a great image. It really is. The 80s really did have the best cover art, in my opinion. Just when you thought it was safe to be dead. UK rating of 15 there. The spine. Let's take a look at the back. There's not much here. Special features are commentary by director Ken Wiederhorn and co-star Thor Van Lingen, and a trailer. Region 2 or Region B. Disc art there. Again, you know, quite a basic and simple release, but you know, this is all we have over here at the moment in the UK. We haven't got an official Blu-ray of it yet, which I'm still holding out for. And you know, you can find this for a good price. Still quite easily available if you look on places like eBay and Amazon. I recommend picking it up for now. Picture quality was good, audio quality was good. But again, you know, try and get that Shout Factory one if you can. I know it's quite difficult, you know, talking from experiences, trying to get, you know, imported Blu-rays from America and other countries. You know, our options are quite limited. And if you look on eBay, the prices are quite jacked up, you know, which is understandable, obviously, because they got imported themselves. But, you know, it's not easy getting your hands on these films. I'm trying to pick up a copy of Part 2, and, you know, they don't come up often. So, you know, you might just have to stick with this DVD release until someone over here releases it, which, again, I hope they do soon. But yeah, that's Return of the Living Dead Part 2. Hope you enjoyed the video, and thank you for watching.